Welcome back to Utah Studies. Today, we're learning about Chapter 12. Let's get into it. All right, so Utah is finally a state. And so Chapter 12 is titled Utah Life Reflects the Nation. And so we're going to have more people come into Utah. Remember the electricity that we got in the territory? Now it's going to be used to expand cities outward, things like that. And we'll talk about the progressive spirit and some other things. So let's get going. Quick video. We're going to start right away with this streetcar video, so enjoy.
The next step in the evolution of the Salt Lake City rail system could not have happened without Salt Lake City's centralized electric system. It was seeing the electricity on Main Street that gave Walter P. Reed, then general manager of the Salt Lake City Railroad, the idea to electrify a streetcar line. With electricity powering the transportation, there would no longer be the reliability issues the mules presented. The first trial run was made on August 8, 1889, with a luxurious new style of street trolley connected to an overhead power line. The new electric cars could race along at a consistent and reliable 30 miles per hour and could hold many more passengers. After a week of test runs, the trains were ready to be put to public use on August 16, 1889. A crowd of more than 500 gathered around Old City Hall to be the first group to take the new train. A fist fight broke out to determine who would be the first to ride. The new electric cars were even more popular than the mule-drawn variety, and within the next few years, the Salt Lake City Railroad expanded its fleet of streetcars to 63 and had more than 42 miles of this new and improved track in operation along the city's unpaved roads.
All right, so transportation's changing. In 1900, there's only 20 cars, give or take, here in Utah, and then, by 2016, there's close to 1 million cars. So you can see that gets ramped up quite a bit. And 1903 is also when the first airplane hits. And part of this is I just want to show you the speed of technology. In 1903, you have your first flight, and it's only 12 seconds, and it goes 120 feet. And basically, 60 years later, you have your first rocket ship. So look, something can start in its infancy. 60 years later, it's a whole nother thing. So I just kind of wanted you to check that out. So how does electricity help us here in Utah, like with our daily lives? Obviously light bulbs, but also washing machines, vacuums. You paid by the bulb, not by the kilowatt back then. I find that kind of interesting. So if you had 4 bulbs, but you didn't turn them on that often, you paid more than somebody that had 1 bulb turned on all the time. They didn't have a way to measure it. This is kind of interesting. Okay, the Bingham Canyon mine, aka Kennecott, aka what's it called now? Rio Tinto. Okay, it's one of the largest open pit mines. They mostly get copper out of there. Quick vocab word: smelting. Okay, smelter. Okay, it's a form of extractive metallurgy. It's mainly used to produce a base metal from ore. And from this map, you can see where it's located, pretty much right next to us. In 2013, they had a landslide. There's a picture of it. Pretty intense. Look at those bulldozers that are covered by the dirt. They look like little Tonka trucks. It looks like I could have, did somebody take a picture of their sandbox? Those are real giant bulldozers or whatever they're called. And look at them. Dump trucks. That's the word I was looking for, dump trucks. Here's a quick video.
Copperton, Utah, the model city that Copper built with its copper-shingled homes, is the approach to Bingham, famous mining town with its 7-mile-long canyon street. a narrow lane sprouting frame dwellings. The mine headquarters of the Utah Copper Company, for many years the scene of feverish activity. Small cable-hauled trams provide an inclined ascent for several hundred feet, permitting us unrestricted vision of this little town. Copper ore. Enough mineral in one day to fill 824 cars, equivalent to a train almost 5 miles long. And that's mining. Terrace and trestle cross and recross this massive mineral basin. Until 1938, more than 266 million cubic yards of material was removed from this enormous mine, a staggering feat exceeding the total excavations for the Panama Canal by more than 20 million cubic yards. A blasting preliminary is the loading and shooting of spring holes, a prologue to the stupendous multiple explosions. Mechanical molds, electric churn drills burrow into the earth, a chain of holes each approximately 23 feet in depth. Fearless powder monkeys nonchalantly pack these small but mighty capsules of ammonium nitrate powder into the apertures, enough explosive to literally move the earth. And here it goes! What an explosion! Thunder over Utah! 125,000 mixture and is delivered to the flotation machines where the copper mineral is floated away from the worthless gangue or rock and recovered as copper concentrate and then made ready for delivery to the smelter. Here, gold, strangely enough, is a byproduct of copper, being caught in valuable quantities in these launders through which the mill tailings flow. Efficient mining and smelting of low-grade ore makes for continuous activity at the massive Garfield smelter, where more copper matte is produced than at any other place in the world. From one steel volcano to another, the fiery copper lava is drawn, rejecting all waste material or slag. The slag is skimmed off. It is poured into special metal dump cars.
I love this cartoon. Here's another one I love. Just showing it, hey, just trying to have a little bit of fun. Okay, so what is a labor union? People join together and fight for workers' rights. Okay, do we have labor unions today? We do. If I go and ask for a raise, the boss can say no, but if all the workers together collectively ask for a raise, then it's harder for management to say no. And I'm not trying to get into labor unions, good or bad. They have pros and cons, and there's union dues and things like that. I'm just trying to tell you what a labor union is, okay? Group of workers, they come together and they want more, usually more money, or in this case, more safety, okay? What would a miner, I spoiled it real quick, what would the miners want? Yeah, they want to live. They want safety in the mine shaft. Okay, so I'll throw up this primary source, and it's called The Jungle. And this is going to be part of the progressive movement. So I want you to read The Jungle. Pause the tape, read The Jungle, then come back. All right, welcome back. So The Jungle is one of the most famous muckraking works of literature, and what they're talking about is the deplorable conditions of the meatpacking industry and all the things they're doing with rancid food and blah, 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 blah. Here's the point. People read the book and people go, I'm disgusted, and now I want the government to protect my food. I want there to be a branch of government or a department that certifies this food is clean and this food is handled in a healthy fashion. Does that make sense? Okay, we're typically a small government country, but there's certain issues where everybody can agree we want fresh food, okay, or we don't want rancid food. And so that's part of this progressive movement, okay? And another example is we want better streets or we want sewers, okay? People come together and they want these services, which is fine, okay? We're also going to prohibit dangerous employment for women and children. In the first factories in America during the first Industrial Revolution, absolutely there was child labor. 7 to 12 is when you started working, and unfortunately, some of the times they had to do dangerous jobs because they're just easier to replace. I know it's sad. Okay, we're gonna watch this video here about bear's ears.
The view from atop Cedar Mesa in southeastern Utah. Below stretches America's newest national park called Bears Ears. It's almost as big as Prince Edward Island. 5,500 square kilometers of canyons, mesas, and reddish-beige desert. Barack Obama created Bears Ears as one of his last acts as president. But long before the park was officially born at the end of last year, many in the state were already trying to kill it. Nicole Holliday comes from a ranching family in a nearby town called Blanding. She fought against the park. So did Utah's Republican government, upset the area would be cut off from development and oil and gas extraction.
For one man to strike his pen and take over 1 million acres, like, holy cow.
But there is a whole other view of this land, an older view.
There's wild onions out here if we can find any.
Every week or so, Jonah Yellowman comes to Bears Ears to collect medicinal herbs, but he always finds more than just the sage he's looking for.
Right here.
Bits of pottery and tools, he says, from the indigenous people who lived here many generations ago.
It's all over the place around here. So be careful where you step sometimes.
Bears Ears has thousands of ancient burial grounds, cultural sites, and rock art that go back millennia.
It's something that we're trying to preserve, you know. It's spiritual. It's our ancestors. They're still here.
To see exactly why this land needs federal protection, I clamber along a steep cliff trail with Navajo elder Mark Maryboy. He helped unite 5 indigenous tribes to submit a proposal for this park. He takes me to one of the most spectacular ancient petroglyphs, known as the Wolfman panel. So all of those holes there, those are bullet holes?
Those are bullet holes made by a high-powered rifle. There's over 100,000 sites, and many of those locations you see the similar bullet holes.
Other cultural sites have been looted, even hacked off with power saws. Now local tribes get a say in how Bears Ears is managed, and that's one of the reasons some Utahns are so dead set against the park.
They're going to start restricting it, restricting access, restricting the freedoms that we already enjoy up there.
And it's not the first time, he says. About 20 years ago, Utah legislators tried to get rid of another new national monument, one created by President Clinton. That effort didn't go anywhere, but this time around, they have a friendly ear in the White House. President Trump has now ordered a review of all the biggest monuments created in the last 30 years, starting with Bears Ears. But getting rid of it won't be easy. Obama used something called the Antiquities Act to create the parks. The law from 1906 gives presidents the power to create protected areas, but not undo them. If Trump can't get rid of Bears Ears, Utah's Republican lawmakers have suggested he shrink it or simply stop funding it. Environmentalists say if that happens, they're ready to defend Bears Ears in court. An attack on one national park makes all of them vulnerable.
All citizens of the United States have a stake and vested interest in protecting these areas.
Back with Yellowman, we come across more traces of his roots.
That's a hogan. I was raised in one of those.
Yellowman says this one was built before white settlers came. His people lost this land once already, he says. He can't help but feel like it could happen again. Kim Brunhuber, CBC News, near Bears Ears Monument, Utah.
President Trump traveled to Utah today, where he dramatically cut back the size of 2 national monuments in that state. It fulfills a pledge made months ago and continues the Trump administration's rollback of key parts of President Obama's legacy. William Brangham has the story.
In Salt Lake City today, President Trump announced his plan to downsize 2 national monuments to rectify what he says was overreach by prior administrations.
As many of you know, past administrations have severely abused the purpose, spirit, and intent of a century-old law known as the Antiquities Act.
The announcement comes after Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke completed a months-long review of 27 different national monuments across the country. Today, the president took aim at 2 different spots in Utah. The first is Bears Ears, which was declared a national monument a year ago by then-President Obama. Today, Trump proposed shrinking the 1.3 million acre monument by 85%, turning it into two smaller, separate monuments. The second is Grand Staircase Escalante, designated by President Clinton in 1996. Its 1.8 million acres would be reduced by almost half and split into three smaller pockets of land. Both Obama and Clinton declared these monuments using the Antiquities Act of 1906, which gives the president broad legal authority to protect historic landmarks, including cultural and natural resources that sit on public lands. But today, President Trump, who had the full support of Utah's all-Republican congressional delegation, again argued that these prior designations amounted to a federal land grab. He argued these lands are better managed locally, not from Washington, D.C.
Some people think that the natural resources of Utah should be controlled by a small handful of very distant bureaucrats located in Washington. And guess what? They're wrong.
But the president's move has also sparked protests from conservation groups and Native American tribes who call the president's announcement a monumental mistake. The Bears Ears region is considered sacred to the 5 Native American tribes who trace their ancestry to the site. It's filled with rock art and is home to over 100,000 native archaeological and cultural sites. Native groups worry these sites will become damaged and inaccessible if they lose this federal protection. Several of those groups rallied over the weekend and today in Utah in advance of the president's arrival. Ethel Branch is the lead lawyer for the Navajo Nation.
To continue who we are as Navajo people, we have to have access to places like Bears Ears, to pristine repositories of culturally significant resources.
Today's announcement will likely continue to be fought in the courts. It's unclear whether a president can use the same Antiquities Act to undo a predecessor's designation. Experts on both sides say a legal decision on this matter could alter the future of American land conservation. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm William Brangham.
Okay, welcome back. This is, if you remember, the dance of the arrows, state power, federal power. Okay, this is Bears Ears. Who should control Bears Ears, the federal government or the local government? Okay, it's up to you, but that's what this is about. Okay, so Bears Ears reflects that battle between the federal government and the state or local government. And if you remember when we learned about who owned the most land in Utah? It's the federal government. And so we have this relationship with them that's positive and negative. This isn't about World War I per se. It's about how Utah fits into World War I. So I'll be real quick. World War I, you'll learn about it another time, but it starts with the Archbishop Franz Ferdinand. He gets assassinated, and it trips all these alliances on different sides, and then suddenly most of the globe is pulled into this conflict, okay? And then, so this is about how Utah participates in World War I. We're not going to get into all the nitty gritty, but there's trench warfare, and it's the birth of tanks, and so there's other things I wish we could talk about. We don't have time. So here's how Utah gets into World War I, participates in World War I. All right, World War I. How does Utah help out? We're sending food, we're sending metal, we're helping out. So why would people from Utah want to fight in World War I, quote unquote? They kind of want to fight. Why is that? To prove their patriotism. Remember, we didn't become a state right away, and now that we're a state, we want to show we're 100% in, okay? So 21,000 people from Utah serve in World War I, and 447 of them give their life. Okay, Wilson tries to stay neutral until the U-boat sinks U.S. ships, all right? And then that's what the book wants you to know. U-boat sinks U.S. ships. There's also the Zimmerman telegram, but that's not included in your book, really. And it was a telegram from Germany to Mexico saying, hey, let's go invade the underbelly. But that's not in your book, so you can learn that next year or something. Anyway, okay, Utah inventor John Browning invents one of the U.S. machine guns, okay? Okay, so after the war is over, it's party time. They call that the Roaring 20s. Okay, you get jazz music, the first radio station, the 19th Amendment. What's the 19th Amendment about? What does that provide? Women's suffrage. Remember last time we talked about how about 1870 Utah grants women's suffrage, but for the rest of America, it's all the way into 1920, okay, 19th Amendment. Okay, after the Roaring 20s, you get the Great Depression, all right? The short answer, people blame the stock market crash, okay? But the in-depth answer is there was systematic economic problems. You know, people are buying these devices, and you buy them and you buy them and you buy them, and the economy grows, but then you don't need to buy them anymore and things like that. Okay, so Utah's part of the agricultural depression as well. The depression hits farmers and whatnot. You have high unemployment, especially in mining and farming, and so obviously that's going to hit Utah pretty hard. All right, so what's a tariff? Tax on imports. You try to protect our industries, you try to have a tariff, but it ends up making things worse because you have to balance out tax on imports. Taxes raise money, but when you do that, you get less trade, and so sometimes if you have a tariff, you end up with less trade, and that means you actually end up with less revenue. Okay? They're going to pass a thing called the New Deal, relief for unemployment, reform for business, and recovery. And they create these agencies. And this expansion of the federal government will reach into Utah and kind of make Utah a little more dependent on the federal government. If you remember, there was a time Brigham Young said, let's be completely self-sufficient, okay? And that's not necessarily possible. And as you move down the line, now we're a little more dependent on the federal government. And here's sort of the beginning of that, okay? Civilian Conservation Corps, people didn't want all these unemployed young men in the country because that could cause civil unrest. So let's put them to work, and this is how they did that. And they built trails, and they helped with the foundation of the national parks and stuff like that. Here's the Utah bank run story. So a bank run, your money goes into the bank. They only have to keep, it's called fractional reserve banking, but they basically only have to keep a fraction of the money that comes in. They loan the rest out. And so if everybody comes and says, I want my money at the same time, they don't have everybody's money at the same time. That's called a bank run, okay? It creates panic. Well, what they did here in Utah, this guy, he just tells the bank tellers, go real slow, you know, 1, 2, make conversation. He stacks the money where everyone can see it. And so as everybody coming out, although it's slow, everybody coming out has their money. The people at the end of the line just go, well, whatever, the bank's got plenty of money, I don't want to wait in this line. And that's sort of how he avoids the bank run, by just delaying it. Now here's a bank run story just in time for the holiday season. Please enjoy.
Don't look now, but there's something funny going on over there at the bank, George. I've never really seen one, but that's got all the earmarks of being a run.
Now, just remember that this thing isn't as black as it appeared. I have some news for you, folks. I was just talking to old man Potter, and he's guaranteed cash payments to the bank. The bank's going to reopen next week.
But, George, I got my money here. Did he guarantee this place?
Well, no, Charlie, I didn't even ask him. We don't need Potter over here.
And I'll take mine now.
No, but you're thinking of this place all wrong, as if I had the money back in a safe. The money's not here. Well, your money's in Joe's house. That's right next to yours. And in the Kennedy house, and Mrs. Maitland's house, and 100 others. You're lending them the money to build, and then they're going to pay it back to you as best they can. Now, what are you going to do, foreclose on them?
I got $242 in here, and $242 isn't going to break anybody.
Okay, Tom. All right. Here you are. You sign this. You get your money in 60 days.
60 days?
Well, now, that's what you agreed to when you bought your shares, Tom.
Tom, did you get your money?
No.
Well, I did. Old man Potter will pay 50 cents on the dollar for every share you got.
50 cents on the dollar?
Yes, cash.
Well, what do you say?
No, Tom, you have to stick to your original agreement. Now, give us 60 days on this.
Okay, Randall.
Are you going to Potter's?
Better to get half than nothing.
That's what I need.
Tom! Randall, now, Randall, wait. Now, wait. Now, listen. Now, listen to me. I beg of you not to do this thing. If Potter gets a hold of this building and alone, there'll never be another decent house built in this town. He's already got charge of the bank, he's got the bus line, he's got the department stores, and now he's after us. Why? Well, it's very simple, because we're cutting in on his business, that's why. And because he wants to keep you living in his slums and paying the kind of rent he decides. Joe, you had one of those Potter houses, didn't you? Well, have you forgotten? Have you forgotten what he charged you for that broken-down shack? Here, Ed, you remember last year when things weren't going so well and you couldn't make your payments? Well, you didn't lose your house, did you? You think Potter would have let you keep it? Can't you understand what's happening here? Don't you see what's happening? Potter isn't selling, Potter's buying. And why? Because we're panicky and he's not, that's why. He's picking up some bargain. Now, we can get through this thing all right. We've got to stick together, though. We've got to have faith in each other.
But my husband hasn't worked in over a year, and I need money.
How am I going to live until the bank opens?
I got doctor bills to pay. I need cash.
I can't keep my kids on faith. I've got to have...
How much do you need?
Hey! I got $2,000. Here's $2,000. This will tide us over to the bank reopens. All right, Tom, how much do you need?
$242.
No, Tom, just enough to tide you over until the bank reopens.
I'll take $242.
There you are.
That'll close my account.
Your account's still here. That's a loan. Okay. All right, Ed.
Well, I got $300 here, George.
All right, now, Ed, what'll it take until the bank opens? What do you need?
Well, I suppose $20?
$20. Now you're talking. Oh. Thanks, Ed. That's fine. All right, now, Miss Thompson, how much do you want?
But it's your own money,
Now,
George.
never mind about that. How much do you want now?
I can get along with 20, all right.
$20, fine.
And I'll sign the paper.
You don't have to sign anything. I know you. You pay when you can. That's okay. All right, Miss Davis.
Could I have $17.50?
That's your heart. Of course you can have it. You got 50 cents. There we go. 7.
We're gonna make it, George.
6.
They'll never close us up today.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Bingo! We made it! Close the door, Eustace. We made it. Look, we're still in business. We still got $2 left. Well, look, let's have some of that. Let's celebrate.
All right, welcome back. So that scene's the bank run scene. There's another one in Mary Poppins, okay, where people run in and stuff like that. You got to rewatch Mary Poppins now. So I hope you enjoyed this lesson. And again, the big picture, we're going from Utah, kind of suspicious, the United States looking at Utah as kind of suspicious, to Utah, we love you, okay? That's the transition that we're going to, that you'll see coming up in the next chapter. So I hope you have a great day and take care.